Boys, it was a disappointing performance last night for the Vikings and J.J. McCarthy in a big 22-6 loss, their first loss of the season. Now 1-1 on the year, heading into a Week 3 game at US Bank Stadium this Sunday against the Cincinnati Bengals. I want to start off the conversation today, not just reacting to the game. Let's talk about J.J. McCarthy in his first 2 weeks. And Joe, I want to start with you because you wrote an article over at Vikings on SI called Trust the Kevin O'Connell School for Players Who Can't Quarterback Good, which is just an A-plus title, 10 out of 10, no notes on that. That's a fantastic title on that. But preaching patience for J.J. McCarthy, a young quarterback. So why should Vikings fans, after what they've seen over the first 2 weeks, let's get you the stats here from J.J. McCarthy over his first 2 weeks. 58% completion percentage, has taken the second most sacks in the league at 9. 3 interceptions, had the pick 6. Had a couple of fumbles last night. It hasn't looked clean or good to start the season and to start his NFL career. But again, it's just 2 games into his NFL career. So why should Vikings fans have patience for J.J. McCarthy?
I mean, look at last year, the last 2 games of the season with Sam Darnold, when you've got an offensive line that's just getting mutilated by more powerful defensive fronts. And Atlanta went out and used 2 first-round picks on pass rushers. They signed Leonard Floyd, who's been very good off the edge his entire career. And they were in the backfield all night long. So, yeah, 6 sacks last night, 9 for the season. Only Cam Ward in Tennessee has been sacked more. He's been sacked 11 times, I believe. The pressure has been there, and it's been very difficult for a 22-year-old guy who just had a baby and came off of an extraordinary high in his NFL debut. Like, we don't even know how much he slept in the last 4 days. And I'm guessing it was very little, because he seems like the kind of guy who wants to be extremely involved as a new father, in addition to being extremely involved and attentive as a starting quarterback, especially in Kevin O'Connell's system, where it preaches extreme study and prepare. So we don't know what his makeup in the head was going into that game. But more importantly, we do know that the left tackle situation with Justin School in place of Christian Darrisaw is a nightmare. It's been a nightmare against the Bears. It's been a nightmare against the Atlanta Falcons. It's a lot like what Sam Darnold had to deal with against the Lions and Rams in the last 2 games of last season. So I don't know how you can approach this any other way than to say, calm down. Not J.J. McCarthy, but fan base. Calm down. This is not the end of the world. We're not unmasking Christian Ponder here. This is still the 10th overall pick in the draft, who was phenomenal in a 12-minute stretch or 15-minute stretch against the Bears in his NFL debut. Look, the Vikings just didn't have any juice on Sunday night because there was no protection. So I'm not going to get up in arms about that when I know that players who go to the Kevin O'Connell School for Players Who Can't Quarterback Good come out on top. Look at Daniel Jones. He has 5 total touchdowns, 71% completions, thrown for nearly 600 yards. The Colts have, I think, scored on basically every possession they've had the football this year. They haven't even punted yet. It's just insane. Darnold just led the Seahawks to a win after throwing 2 first-half picks in Pittsburgh. So if you trust the process, if you're patient, and you get quality protection, which McCarthy should get when Darrisaw returns, hopefully in week 3, but if not then, maybe for the games overseas in weeks 4 and 5, and Ryan Kelly's concussion isn't that bad. Michael Juergens was terrible. Oh my God. I've never seen a guy block nobody and still fall to the ground. He literally didn't get touched. He didn't even trip. He just fell. It's like he short-circuited a couple of times. So this is going to be the case when you have a bad offensive line protecting a 22-year-old guy. So calm down, trust the school, and know that things are going to be just fine with McCarthy.
Well, where do you stand on what you've seen from J.J. McCarthy? Chris Collinsworth was said it time and time again last night on the Sunday Night Football broadcast. We've seen 7 bad quarters of offensive play from the Vikings and just 1 good quarter of good offensive play from this Vikings offense through the first 2 games. Where do you stand? Concern, patience on J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, my concern level is like, I think a 4 out of 10 is where I would probably put it right now, which is to say that it's not very high. It's also not a 1 or a 2 because this has been 7 bad quarters out of 8. McCarthy has not looked like he's been in command of things, feeling in a rhythm. There's been issues operating the offense. There's been some like pre-snap penalties. He just hasn't looked very comfortable so far. And a big part of that certainly is the offensive line that has been pressuring him a lot. He's also held on to the ball. I think if you look at his average time to throw, it wasn't super quick in week one. I think it was worse last night. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but that's an issue. I mean, that's a reason why quarterbacks like Caleb Williams last year took as many sacks as he did. Sacks are often a quarterback stat as much as they are an O-line stat. Obviously, when Justin School gets roasted around the edge for a quick sack, that's not on McCarthy or something like that. But I don't know. There have been some things with McCarthy that I think harken back to some of the pre-draft scouting reports, like things with touch and throwing to the left specifically. If you look at his next-gen stats passing chart, not a lot of good stuff to the left in that game last night, including the throw to Jalen Naylor that could have been a huge difference maker in that game that he just overthrew. And like Collinsworth said, you got to put the touch on that ball and then kind of throw a Russell Wilson moon ball, and he just didn't quite have it, and that was a big miss on a play where the pocket held up great. I overall agree with Joe that like this is a 22-year-old kid in a great situation for a quarterback, the best possible situation for a quarterback, basically. I mean, once the O-line gets healthy. So I think that it is far too early to panic, to have any major concern about J.J. McCarthy, but I'm also not, like I said, I'm not at a zero on that either because of how rough it's been for 7 of 8 quarters. The fact that I don't know what the Vikings' plan is with Christian Darrisaw. In week 1, he was questionable, but that was just because they wanted to let him work out at Soldier Field. This week, he was ruled out on Friday. I don't know that he's suddenly going to be ready to go in week 3 against Trey Hendrickson, and if he's not, the Vikings could be in trouble. I mean, that is one player who could single-handedly wreck that game, and then you got TJ Watt. The week after that in Dublin, you got Myles Garrett, the scariest dude in the league, in week 5. Like, the Vikings really need Christian Darrisaw back for me to feel okay about this thing moving forward. With that said, I think they can go 2-1 or 3-0 in those games in part because of the quarterbacks they're going to be facing, which does not include Joe Burrow now. But I mean, we're talking about J.J. McCarthy here, so that I would say I'm at a 4 out of 10 on the concern level. I want to see next week just some sort of progress, some sort of getting things going in the first half, sustaining drives. They haven't reached 50 total plays in either of these games, so I'm not panicking by any means, but you want to start to see some improvement quickly here.
Tony, where does your concern level sit after 2 weeks?
I'm going to be honest. I am a little concerned. I mean, I agree with everything Will and Joe said, that there's total reason to believe Kevin O'Connell will figure it out. But it just hasn't looked good. I mean, J.J. McCarthy is an incredibly talented player, and it's all there, but he is really young. And I mean, in the NFL, we've seen how quickly things can go bad for these young quarterbacks. I mean, we saw the Colts essentially give up on Anthony Richardson, and in a very, I guess, similar situation because he was a really young quarterback. Not that I think the Vikings are going to give up on J.J. McCarthy, nor should they. But there has to be some improvements. Obviously, the fourth quarter, he looked very good, but it hasn't really looked good at all in the last game. And the situation's great, which almost leans me towards thinking there might be a lot of issues, because if you are a good quarterback, you should succeed in this situation. But he is 22. Teams need to be patient with developing quarterbacks because we've seen teams give up on them so quickly. But there needs to be a lot of improvements, and the offensive line, I think, will help. But that Falcons game just did not look good at all, and there was really hard to find anything encouraging from McCarthy's perspective in that game.
I want to talk about the offensive line in a second and how that's impacted things. But first, Will, how much or what can Kevin O'Connell do to help J.J. McCarthy out? We know that Kevin O'Connell's this quarterback whisperer. He's brought a lot of success for a lot of guys who haven't previously had the levels of success they experienced in the Kevin O'Connell system. So what can we see O'Connell do to adjust to help J.J. McCarthy? It feels like, as you guys have pointed out, it didn't look good last night against the Falcons. It feels like things are happening a little too slowly. It doesn't feel like he's reading things in a fast enough manner when he's back there behind the line of scrimmage, looking kind of diagnosing how plays are going. How can the Vikings adjust? How can Kevin O'Connell adjust to help J.J. McCarthy out well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple things. First of all, I was surprised that after the way that Jordan Mason seemed to spark the Vikings offense in the fourth quarter last week, that we didn't see him get a touch on either of the first two series for the Vikings, which was a 4-and-out and then a 3-and-out. And then when they finally got basically their one good drive all day, Mason was involved on that drive that got down to 1st and goal at the 2 and then became a disaster from there, in part because maybe they didn't just hand it off to Mason at the 2. So I want to see more of him, and we might have to because Aaron Jones left the game with a hamstring injury, and we're not sure what his status is going to be for week 3. And then I think you have to just kind of let McCarthy loose. You have to let him rip it. I don't think I know those things can sort of contradict each other to some degree. Like, I want to see the Vikings get the run game going, but also if it's like 2nd and 8, that's not necessarily a situation where you want to be running the football. You got to let McCarthy just sling the ball around the field and get it to Justin Jefferson and get it to TJ Hawkinson, who's been really quiet through 2 weeks, and Adam Thielen. And I think getting Jordan Addison back in week 4 will be big for this offense. That McCarthy and Addison had a really, really strong connection all throughout training camp when Jefferson was hurt. But that's not happening this week. They got one more week without him. So you got to just kind of, I think, trust him to sling the ball, try to get into a rhythm. I think if he can just get some completions going, like it happened on that one drive that I just mentioned in the second quarter where he hits Thielen for 19 yards on 3rd and 18. He hits Naylor a couple times on that drive. It feels like he got into a rhythm there like he did in the fourth quarter in Chicago. But other than that, it's been tough for him to get into a rhythm because there just haven't been a lot of completions. Maybe some shorter routes over the middle of the field. But yeah, I don't know. I think Kevin O'Connell and J.J. McCarthy got to get back in the film room this week and work on fixing some things. And then it's just going to be up to McCarthy to go out there and get rid of the ball on time, in rhythm, and make the throws.
Can we get the play call in faster? Because it feels like I'll let you have the floor here in a second, Joe. It feels like we've seen quite a bit over the past 2 weeks that the Vikings have run into these issues where they're running down the play clock to the very last second. And it's an issue, and it's also just not allowing J.J. McCarthy to get up at the line, kind of read the defense, and get comfortable with where he's at. This feels like it's been an issue under Kevin O'Connell for a while, Joe, and I don't know. Is there something that we can do about that? But go ahead. You were going to say something.
Quick answer on that. I actually didn't think that was as much of a problem against Atlanta as it was against the Bears. So just my quick 2 cents on that. But I think we got to make this very clear. Every quarterback, when they're 22 years old, in the NFL is going to have ups and downs. We just mentioned Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold. They were punted out of New York. They had poor infrastructure, bad coaching. This is not what McCarthy is surrounded by. He just had a bad situation because his offensive line was gouged. Minnesota didn't have 7 and then 8 key players after Aaron Jones went out last night. 7 guys missed all or most of that game, and then 8 when Jones went out. So I don't know how many games you're going to win against quality NFL competition. And I think everybody was a bit surprised by how ferocious Atlanta's defense was. They were good. Yeah. They really were good. They reminded me a lot of the Rams last year where it's like, holy crap, they're just killing guys at the line of scrimmage. And then in that secondary, Billy Bowman, who the Vikings could have had in the middle rounds, kid out of Oklahoma, was an absolute dog. So I will say this, though. Tom Brady in his second game. And I'm not comparing J.J. McCarthy to Tom Brady. I'm just using the GOAT as an example of why you have to have patience if you're a Vikings fan right now. Tom Brady, in his second career start in 2001, went 12 of 24 for 86 yards, and the Patriots got slaughtered. The next week, he came out and threw for like 375 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then the ups and downs continued. He threw, I think, 4 or 6 picks in his next couple of games, and the Patriots got rocked. Well, guess what? Those Patriots went 11-5, and when it was all said and done, Tom Brady was driving the Patriots down the field for a game-winning Adam Vinatieri field goal to beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. Is that going to happen? The odds of it are pretty low, right, with J.J. McCarthy and the Vikings. but it is the ultimate example of how all of us who are not out there on that field and in J.J. McCarthy's freaking body have to calm the freak down. Okay? 1 game, 2 games, 3 games, 4 games. Kevin O'Connell warned everybody in training camp saying there will be ups and downs. But this is the guy who's known as the quarterback whisperer who went out and said, you know what, Daniel Jones, I love what you do, but we're going to let you go to Indy. And Sam Darnold, hey, thanks for the memories. You threw 35 touchdowns, 4,300 yards, top 10 MVP vote getter, Pro Bowl. Thanks, but we got our guy. Aaron Rodgers drooling over the idea of playing for Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson. Thanks, GOAT, 4-time MVP. We've got our guy. You have to calm down if you're a Vikings fan right now. They have their guy, and there's going to be ups and downs. And when it's all said and done, Kevin O'Connell and J.J. McCarthy are going to look like the ones who had the patience and the brilliance and the ability to get it done in the end. And the fans are going to sit there and say, oh, yeah, I really got to calm down.
Tied a Steve Young record in the first week, then gets compared to Tom Brady in the second week. Which legendary quarterback is next that J.J. McCarthy is going to get compared to following week 3 against the Bengals? Tony, the offensive line has been an issue. As we know, J.J. McCarthy, as we said earlier, taken 9 sacks on the season so far. That's only behind Cam Ward, who's taken 11. How much of these early season struggles for J.J. McCarthy is down to just the offensive line just being not as healthy as he needs it to be?
I think it's really hard to ignore. I mean, Justin School or whatever his name is just not a good offensive lineman. And like Joe mentioned, Juergens did not have a good game either. But it's just such an interesting perspective watching J.J. McCarthy because things looked so smooth last year with Darnold. And for all the reasons that Joe said, he is only 22 years old, and I think it's hard to expect him to hit the ground running and look like a all-pro in his first couple starts. But it is also hard to accept that the Vikings offense just might not be as good with a young QB these first couple weeks because they look like a contender last year, and they just really haven't looked like that through the first 2 weeks. So it's going to come with criticism, and I think if anyone can handle that, it is J.J. McCarthy because it seems like he's got quite the head on his shoulders. So it'll be an interesting development to watch because with these young QBs, we've seen so many teams give up on them quickly these last couple of years. But when other teams like the Falcons with Michael Penix, who had 3 times as many starts as McCarthy did in college, and Bo Nix, and there's so many of these old rookie quarterbacks, and McCarthy's on the opposite spectrum. So his development's just going to, I think, look different than other rookie quarterbacks we've seen the past couple of years. And I think Vikings fans, myself included, just need to accept that because I just don't think it's going to look like a linear straight up throughout the year.
Let's broaden the scope of this conversation here. Let's talk about the Vikings overall. As we said, 22-6 loss last night to the Falcons. That puts them second place in the NFC North. And I want to talk about the NFC North now after what we saw over the last couple days. The Packers, they run away from the Commanders on Thursday Night Football, 27-18 win. The Lions just demolished the Bears, who I think we can all say comfortably that the Bears once again are taking home the title as most overhyped offseason team in the league once again, quickly crashing down to earth despite so much preseason hype about them. But the Lions, they bounce back after a disappointing week 1 loss to the Packers. Are the Vikings the third best team in the NFC North? Will, I'll start with you, then Joe, then Tony.
Right now, through 2 weeks, I think they pretty clearly are. They seem to be kind of the Packers being in their own tier with what they did to the Lions in week 1 and then what they did to a good Commanders team last Thursday. The Lions pretty clearly number 2 after dominating a Bears team that the Vikings almost lost to. And then I think you can put the Vikings just a little bit ahead of the Bears in the bottom tier. Obviously, I think there's a lot of time for that to change. I think the Vikings, on paper, the roster is really, really good. The coaching staff is really good. They could absolutely move up. And I mean, the Packers look awfully good, but I mean, there's definitely a world where the Vikings kind of start to progress and get to where we thought they were going to be and can hang with the Packers and the Lions of the world. But yeah, right now I think they're pretty clearly the third best team in the division. The Packers with Micah Parsons just look awfully dangerous right now. The way if Jordan Love is going to play at a high level like we've seen so far, that's going to be a tough team to beat. So we'll see. It's really really early again, like we said, but with the Vikings overall, I think with J.J. McCarthy specifically, if next week against the Bengals is like another complete stinker dud, I don't think it will be too early to raise my concern level from a 4 to like a 6 or a 7 or something. I want to see soon some just a touchdown or two maybe next week would be nice. Just be able to move the ball a little bit. They didn't get to 200 yards of offense last night against the Falcons. I'll be curious to watch the Falcons moving forward. I think that defense could actually be sneaky good. I really like a lot of their rookies. But they were 29th in defensive DVOA last year. So if they haven't actually taken a big leap forward, then that game might not age super well for the Vikings. Just like their week 1 win over the Bears already hasn't aged super well. So we'll see, but I don't know. Like I want to see some improvement pretty quick here from the Vikings if I'm going to believe that they got a shot against the Lions and the Packers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of mirages right now in the NFL, as there are every year after 2 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is Green Bay as good as they've looked for 2 weeks? I don't think they are. I mean, I know they have good pieces. I know Micah Parsons made them instantly better. But you got to remember, they played at home in their opener against a Lions team that had new coordinators on both sides of the ball. The Lions looked like trash. Yes, Green Bay deserves a lot of credit for making them look like trash. And you can pull up all the Goff stats you want without Ben Johnson, 0-19-1 or something like that in games where he wasn't the coordinator and he was the starter against NFC teams. There's some crazy stat like that. But look what they did yesterday against a Chicago team that is clearly awful. The Lions look like the Lions of last year, and they're very, very good. And then Green Bay, they get a week 2 short rest game at home against Washington. That's just not fair, right? Like those games, teams don't even get to prepare all that much for. And as good as Washington is, that's just one of those insurmountable things that teams struggle to overcome. And I think we'll see it with the Vikings later in the season when they play at Detroit and then have to go to the Chargers on short rest. They're not going to win that game against LA on the road. I really don't think so, much like they didn't last year when they went from the Lions to LA to play the Rams on short rest. Those are tough situations. So I think Green Bay is a bit of a mirage. I can see them coming back to life as they hit the road in the next few weeks. Maybe not against Cleveland, but I guarantee you Myles Garrett's going to make that a lot closer than people think it'll be. And I think the Lions are definitely a little bit better than the Vikings right now. But I would say it's Green Bay, Minnesota, neck and neck. And I'm not going to judge the Vikings, who they are right now with all these injuries, compared to who I think they actually are when they're healthy. So they're not dealing with a lot of season-ending issues right now. So if they can get healthy and get these players back, I can see them winning a lot of games, double-digit games, like a lot of us predicted going into the season. So it's just way too early to sit there and say Minnesota's the third best team in the NFC right now, when I thought going in they were the best team. So I'll still say they're the best team right now when they're healthy.
Tony?
I like it.
Yeah, I don't think many people agree with that, but
Usually don't.
yeah, it's hard to not ignore how good the Packers have looked. I mean, the Commanders also had the same amount of rest for that game, so I don't think that had a huge impact, but yeah, I think third in the NFC North is entirely fair. I think you could make the argument they're better than the Lions. I mean, then you're just kind of comparing the common opponent that the Lions have scored more points against the Bears, and I think matchups make fights, make games, for lack of a better term. But yeah, I think they're still one of the 3 best teams in this division, and I think that can change throughout the year. But the NFL is like a "what have you done for me lately" type of league, and the Packers have looked like the best team in the NFC North, arguably in the entire conference through 2 weeks. So J.J. McCarthy will play better, at least I think he will. But it's hard to project that from what we've seen from him in the first 2 weeks of the year.
So, final question for you guys. After 2 weeks, how have your projections for this team changed? I looked back at where you guys projected this team in our staff predictions. Will and Tony, you both had the Vikings at 11-6. Joe, you had them at a maybe preposterous 14-3. We'll get to you in a little bit. Tony, I want to start with you, then Will, then Joe, because we're going opposite order of those projections. Tony, you had them 1-1, but you had the results flipped in your week by week predictions. How have your projections changed for this Vikings team going forward after what you've seen through the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, I don't think by much. Maybe one less win. But as long as Kevin O'Connell and Brian Flores are calling plays, I'm going to expect this team to figure it out. I don't think many teams in the NFL have duo play callers that can compete with that. And I think in football, it just comes down to quarterback play and play calling at the end of the day. And the Vikings have two of those three figured out right now. And I think the two play callers will help the quarterback figure it out eventually. So it might start a little bit slower, but I fully expect by the time November and December rolls around that this is going to be a different football team as they get healthier. And even if J.J. McCarthy creeps back towards average, this team is more than capable of winning double-digit games, and I think we're going to see that as the year goes on.
Yeah, I still feel good about the talent on this team. I still feel good about the coaching staff. With that said, there's a long way for them to go on offense to have me think that they're going to win 11 games or even 9 or 10. I think right now I'd probably still pick them to go 10-7, but I don't know how confident I can be in that after watching 7 of the 8 quarters. We're talking patience, and that is completely justified, and that should be here with a 22-year-old quarterback and the injuries the Vikings have had so far. But there can't be that much patience. There has to be a real sense of urgency at TCO Performance Center this week to get this thing turned around, because they need to go a long way on offense to get to where they want to be. And you have to go 2-1 at worst over the next 3 weeks. Ideally, you go 3-0 because you're facing Jake Browning and Aaron Rodgers and Joe Flacco in this little AFC North trip over the next 3 weeks. And you're going to need Brian Flores' defense to do a lot of the heavy lifting there, but you're also going to need the offense to show up. And if you can get to 4-1, you feel really good about yourself. If you're 3-2, even 2-3, or if they're 1-4, they're obviously the season's over. You're in real trouble, because after the bye, guess what? Eagles, Chargers, Lions, Ravens. That is an absolute gauntlet. Those 4 teams have all been impressive so far, even if Jalen Hurts threw for like 100 yards and they still beat the Chiefs. It's got to happen quickly here. It really has to happen quickly here if I'm going to think that they're going to have a chance to get to double-digit wins. So I still think it's entirely possible. But yeah, we can't just – if this happens again next week and they lose by multiple scores and McCarthy looks like a mess, that concern level is going to start to really, really go up for me. At least in terms of this season's outlook.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it, because in 3 weeks exactly from today, we'll be sitting here talking about the 4-1 Vikings, because Jake Browning ain't going to do a damn thing next week. Now, Minnesota will roll. And since his defense isn't like elite or anything, Trey Hendrickson can be a game record, but whatever. Pittsburgh can't stop anybody. I mean, if they're losing at home to the Seahawks, that's probably not a good sign. And if the Jets are putting up 30 on them, that's not a good sign. They're not the Steelers of old. The Browns suck. That's an international game, obviously. So 4-1, 3 weeks from today. Then they get the bye. They rest up. They get healthy. And over the next 3 weeks, this is when we work out the kinks. This is when JJ gets comfortable. This is when things start to really smooth out for him and slow down, and we start to go. Because you come back and you make a statement against Philadelphia to get to 5-1 after the bye. That game is right here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then you go to lose to the Chargers. So you're 5-2, but you're feeling pretty good going into that November clash against Detroit when things start to really ramp up. 5-2, feeling good. Baltimore's here. Chicago's here. You could easily be 6-3 or 7-2, but the point is that the kinks will be worked out against this garbage AFC North gauntlet coming up here. just in time for the real show against the Eagles, Chargers, Lions, and Ravens. And from there, if the Vikings are healthy, there's always that caveat, right? If they're healthy, they'll be sprinting to double-digit wins and a shot at the number 1 overall seed. I'm not backing down on that, not one bit. Not one bit. There's no way in hell I'm backing down on that. Not with this roster and coaching staff.
What's it going to take you to get to back down from that? I'm just curious at this point.
I mean, if Christian Darrisaw is buried by an avalanche, then yeah, I'll punt on that for sure. But as long as he's coming back, I'm okay.
So keep Christian Darrisaw away from any mountains, is what you're saying.
Yeah, leave him stay out of Denver or something. Yeah.
Guys, I appreciate you guys stopping by. Good stuff today. Go read all their work over at Vikings on SI, as well as Gophers, Twins, and Timberwolves on SI, covering it all for you across Minnesota sports. Do hit subscribe on the channel. It does help us get found. Also notifies you every time we post a new video to the channel. We will talk to you tomorrow with another topic across Minnesota sports.